like this, like remember the old watches?
Yes.
So I would say, "Excuse me, do you have the temperature?" And they would go 4 o'clock. Then I go up to the next person. Excuse me, because I'd always do this, like my wrist.
Do you have the
Yeah,
temperature?
you have the temperature, and they say, "Yeah, it's 2 o'clock." And so much for
That's a
Shema,
good one.
right?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah. Shema Israel. Shema.
So much for Shema. So Apostle Peter,
Yes, sir.
there's so much. I mean, honestly, we don't know where to begin.
A lot of topics to talk
A
about here.
lot of stuff, but how about how about we start with Pesach? I'll get your thoughts. You
Yes.
know, the hot, cold. What's running through your mind, through your heart about Pesach? Because I've got a lot. I've got 7 broadcasts on the tip of my tongue right now. So if I don't let you start,
I might not get a word in edgewise. Okay, well,
we're gonna be in
let's
trouble.
kick this on. Thank you, Alpha. Let's kick that off.
So go
Well,
right ahead.
one thing that always comes to my heart every year, and I think that those of you who are coming back home, and I mean all the way home, right? You know who you are. You're out there, you're saying, look, I've had about enough of this, and you're coming all the way back. And one of the challenges that we face is his word concerning the 3 times per year that he requires his sons to return. Now, there's a reason beyond the sort of religious thinking that is important. And it has to do with us remaining in our zone, in our lane, in our ambassadorship, and not forgetting who we represent. Because if you spend too much time in the field, you start to forget who you represent, and you become too acclimated to your target community or the people that you were sent to, and you forgot who sent you and why. So you have to return to reset. And so he doesn't say once in a while, he says specifically 3 times a year. And so he requires his sons to return. And I do believe that this is something that we're slowly coming back to an understanding of and an appreciation for, that we didn't have before, because we had so much from churchianity and so much from the the um, the anti group, the against group. We got so much thrown at us that we became comfortable with even just a morsel, with just any piece of the kingdom, if you will. But he came to give us the fullness, that we would have all of it. And there are many berakah in Pesach that are missed when you don't take the time. So I really would like to talk about that. I have an interesting angle that I'm going to come at that from, but I am interested in your thoughts. And I think that everyone should be
Um,
now turning their hearts, if you will, right, towards Pesach and towards getting their heart ready for this beautiful celebration and appointed time.
I'm gonna let you keep going for 2 reasons. The same reason that I told you before. I feel led to I feel led not to interrupt because once I get going, that's it. And the second is it'll give me an opportunity to do a little on-screen housekeeping. So go
I'll
ahead.
do that. And I want to point out something. I was thinking about this earlier this morning. Let me get it in front of me. Hang on a second. Give me a moment. Let me put it on my screen so I can see it. How many of you out there have heard of love language? How many of you have heard of it? I believe Gary Chapman, 1992, if I remember correctly, wrote a book called The Five Love Languages, right? And when he did that, when that subject just sort of took off. I don't know if you remember that. I'm sure you do, because it became sort of the discussion. Everybody was talking about that. And I think it was a good discussion, because I think that we all need to think about how to love. When we say love one another, we don't really know why, how. We don't think about that. We don't think about what that looks like.
By the way, your sound is a little bit muffled. So
Really?
that's
Okay.
better.
All right. I was turning my head a little bit. So. So what are the 5 love languages? And I just want to quickly say this: it's physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, and gift giving. Right? Which of these doesn't Yahuwah want you to walk in every feast? How can you walk in words of affirmation? How can you affirm your brother? How can you encourage your brother if you're not with him? He doesn't even know you. You don't even talk to him. How can you give him quality time if you're not even there? How can he have your acts of service? How can he receive those acts of service if you're not there? Okay. Uh,
Right.
how can you do gift giving if you're not in his circle? How can you?
That's right.
So basically, what you're telling me is there'll be 0 love languages expressed. So all
Yeah.
of us agree that these are the love languages, right? We all, let's just default to that for the sake of not arguing, and let's
Yeah.
just say that those are the 5 for the sake of discussion. Then which of these are you expressing?
You want to repeat those? Just because it
Physical
sounded
touch,
a little bit.
physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, and gift giving. These are 5 love languages. Okay. And this is something that, everybody kind of works within. In other words, you find the thing that works for you. Maybe you're a physical touch person that needs the hug and the touch, right? You need that. That's how you receive love. Maybe
Sure.
you're a words of affirmation person who physical touch doesn't really do anything for you. But if somebody comes along and says, "Hey, I'm proud of you. I saw what you did. And I want to come across the room here and to say, hey, I just want to tell you that I'm proud of you and I'm thankful for you." Now he's receiving something in love that he otherwise wouldn't receive if he wasn't in fellowship. How about quality time? How in the world are you going to give somebody quality time? Quality time requires time. I mean, it's right in the name. So how about
Yeah.
gift giving? Yahuwah requires all of this from us, by all 5 requires all of them from us. Okay.
Yeah.
Gift giving. How are you going to give someone a gift? Or even better, spiritually, how will you activate their gift? What is the purpose of the apostolic and the prophetic? Activation. How are you going to get activated? You don't get inside the presence where they can physically touch you, where they can lay hands on you, right? Where there can be that transference. There's all these things missing. Where's your acts of service? What if that's my love language, right? And the way that I receive love is acts of service, and you're not doing any. So how do I know you, my brother, love if there's no exchange going
Exactly.
on?
Exactly.
So you see this discussion of love, this discussion of love languages and ways to communicate, okay, is very important.
Right.
Very important.
Doesn't doesn't the book of Yehuda, Jude, call these love feasts?
Yes.
Aren't they
Oh,
called?
beautiful point.
Aren't they called love feasts?
Beautiful, beautiful point. See why I love you? This is why I love you.
Thank you.
It's very
And
important.
then he warns us there are love feasts, but as apostles at the gates, it's up to you to guard your gates. And what I love about what you're
Yes.
always saying is on Shabbat and the Moadim, your gates are closed. Now, everything you touched upon, proximity is the ingredient and the dynamite. Those things can work at a distance, but kihila, like you say, well, not like you said, like Yahuwah said, not forsaking the assembling of yourselves together as the manner of some is. So the proximity is the dynamite
Yes.
that allows those gifts to fully
Yes.
manifest. You can do it at a distance up to a point.
Right.
But now here's why people are afraid of fellowship. This is why I'm afraid of fellowship. So if I'm afraid, being a seasoned veteran, I'm gonna speak for the body. Okay, familiar spirit. In other words, you get to know me, I get to know you.
Right.
Okay, you see that I have to eat like you do. You see that I have to
Yes.
go to the bathroom like you do. You
How
see
about
that
that?
I have to. You see that I raise my voice to my wife and vice versa. God forbid, every once in a while. So that familiar spirit comes in, and it's like the respect level, and then the honor level goes down. And guarding against it is nice, but it's part of the human condition, and it's a specific spirit. So people stay home in the safety of isolation because that familiar spirit is waiting
Yes.
to bring dishonor. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
And we
Yes.
have to guard against it. And honestly, as much as I guard against it, I can't stop it. Because when I get to know, as a human being, right? When I get to know somebody, I'm like, okay, well, now they're just Joe Schmo, as opposed to Reverend Doctor Most Holy, which you can keep at a distance. You know what I'm saying.
The entire word relationship is about proximity.
Yeah.
So you cannot have a relationship without proximity issues. So how a relationship works is the proper distance. So the earth distance from the sun, the stars, their distance from one another. That's why they work. If they're too close together, that doesn't work. If they're too far apart, that doesn't work, right?
Yeah, that's good.
So
I like
everything has to work within its spaces and its appointed places. So you can't get too close, so you outshine each other. You can't get too far because you can't have that physical touch and you encounter. So there's that bit of, like, we call it the porcupine dance, right?
Yeah.
How
Balance.
close is too close and how far is too far.
Very
I
good.
think that's what we're working out 3 times a
And
year.
every
That's
relationship
working
is
Rosh
different.
Shabbat.
But
Yes.
this is why sometimes there are 5 people in our kehillah instead of 5,000. It's sometimes it's not the doctrine. Sometimes it's not the teaching. Sometimes it's not even the personality. It's a mental health issue where you're afraid to get close to people,
Oh,
and the devil says, "Oh, I got a spirit for you." See?
you nailed it. You just nailed it. You're seriously dealing with some serious mental health issues out there, folks. And it's not, this is
Yeah, but
not
I
a dig.
battle with it too. I'm not.
Everybody does.
I battle
Everybody
with
does.
that too.
The level of isolation that we've been given, solitary confinement for too long. And when you do that to people, if you do that to a prisoner in jail, you drive them insane, right? If you put them in solitary for too long, and we all know this, it's actually a cruel and unusual punishment. And so we are suffering cruel and unusual punishment with our separation. Selah,
That's
Selah,
right.
because I need your gift. My gift has gotten better from interacting with you. Iron sharpens iron. We're on the same mission, so we're constantly sharpening one another. You need that. I don't know anybody that doesn't need that.
Yeah.
But I also know that we got some bad habits. So you mentioned one: familiarity breeds contempt. And respect in my generation, your generation, was intentional. It wasn't happenstance. It wasn't something that happened if you felt like it. It wasn't something that happened because it was a good day.
It was
It
expected.
didn't matter how you felt, whatever. When I saw my grandmother and my Hispanic community out there, my grandmother was Doña Rosa. Okay, Doña Rosa.
Landlord,
And all right, that's right. My grandmother, that's how we referred to her.
landlady.
And when I walked in the house every single time, all of you will identify who are Hispanic. I had to walk in and say bendición, mami, right? Y que Dios te bendiga every single time.
You couldn't pretend that she wasn't there.
No, sir. Are you
Well, let me tell
crazy?
you. Well, let me tell you, because you're talking about love feast and Shabbat. Let me tell you what used to happen here, and let me tell you what happened in bigger congregations in Miami. People would walk in. I'm the apostle. This is the elder. This is the elder's wife. They'd sit down. They start. Okay, not even a Shabbat Shalom to the leaders. So I started doing. I stood at the. What I started doing is I stood at the door and I said Shabbat Shalom, forcing them to respond to me. They know I'm there. It's my house. I'm hosting, and they don't even have the courtesy to say Shabbat Shalom. So I was watching the movie with Sidney Poitier, To Serve with Love. Those were the days.
Yeah.
You demanded respect. You earned respect. You got respect. There was certain protocol. There's no protocol anymore. How do you walk into a shaliach's house? All right, ignore Mindy and Peter. Start nabbing and yapping to one of your brother in there, and make believe you're not there.
Mm.
Talk about familiar spirit. And I said to the people,
Or better
I said
yet,
to the
call
people,
your table their table.
I said to the people, you don't walk in here. I had to
Yeah.
say it. I shouldn't have to say it. When you walk in here, you say Shabbat Shalom to me and my family. We are opening the door for you.
In fact, that's what the scripture tells us. It tells us that in Luke chapter 10. We just read that last night during our Evangelist Corner, which, if you didn't catch that, folks, get back and grab that. It was a great,
I'm gonna
really good conversation.
I'm gonna
Really
watch it.
good. We talked about the alliance versus the defiance. The alliance versus the defiance. So you're joining one or the other. You're going to join one or the other.
That's true.
So there is no middle ground. So you're either part of the alliance or you're part of the defiance, but you're going to be part of one.
But we need to realize this is not a new problem because
Right.
Shaliach says in Hebrews 10:25, as is the as that do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together, as is the manner
right.
of some. Well, there obviously was enough some for him to address it to a whole
To
Kehillah.
say that. Oh,
It was
boy,
not
I'm
just
so glad
it
you
was
said
not just 3 people that were doing that. But listen, Peter, even in the world, you get a plumber or an electrician comes to your door. You don't. You're muted. You're muted. You don't say hello. You don't say shalom. How do you come into somebody's house and you say shalom, Shabbat shalom to every? See, that tells you they're unclean spirits that are coming to worship. There are unclean spirits that are coming to Pesach. Okay, you're muted, brother. So please.
I had to mute myself because if I didn't mute myself, I would have interrupted you 4 times.
Okay, no problem.
I'm so thankful that you brought that up because this is something that people take so for granted.
Yeah.
I love that you pointed out that you had to move yourself to the front and to the door just so people would understand a principle, listen, that he said in Luke chapter 10, when you go out, first you pray. Secondly, you find the man of shalom. And what do? What is your instruction from the king? He's specific. He's so specific. He didn't say greet the whole house full of people. He didn't say go in there and see if you can make a few friends. He said find the man of shalom and say shalom to your house.
Wow.
How did you greet me? Shalom to our house. We greet you, shalom to your house. When we do broadcasts, we send shalom to your house.
Exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. If you even if you don't say Shabbat Shalom to anybody, the host of the Shalom
absolutely
is
true.
And they do exactly the opposite. So you know right away. I mean, being
disrespectful.
I'm not
just telling you they're coming for another reason.
I'm not just an apostle. I'm a pastor, and to be honest with you, that's the kind of stuff that if you don't check your spirit and you don't realize that they're not robots, that they have the same issues, a lot of the same issues that you and I have, that can get you to quit. Because I'm not asking you for $1,000. I'm not asking you to sign away your life insurance. I'm just you come to my listen. I can get a bum off the street who is running a meth lab, okay, and I can get him to say hi, sir. He's not going to enter your house without saying hello. And believers get away with it, and as leaders, we should not let them get away with it.
Absolutely not. And this is where we have to balance this sweet thing that we love to do. We love to be sweet. We love to be accommodating. We love to be kind. This is our default. Okay. So we default to kindness. We default to generosity. We default to hospitality.
I got a better plan. I default to sicking my wife after them.
Well, there is that. But don't get me off on that one. But don't do that. You send me on these rabbit trails.
You know what I noticed about you? Sometimes I gotta just wait because you will lose your train of thought. So that means
I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry for doing that, but I didn't notice it till last week. Some people get interrupted and they keep right on going, but when you get interrupted, it's like
there was a point. You know what it is? It's the preacher in me. I always am coming to a point, and then usually people will not quite let me get there.
Yeah,
like
I will back down. I will back down. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead. I forgot what I was saying, so I have to rewind. Anyway,
my point is proven. That's why I can't. I got to let you finish your point. My point is proven. But as I get older,
when we come together, okay, he gives us instruction. Like Paul was very specific about when you come together, don't do these specific things like tarry for one another and, be respectful to each other. Don't make a poor person feel bad. Yeah. Like there are different instructions we were given. And though we are kind, this is the point I was going to make, though we are sweet and we are kind and we are loving as our Father in heaven is, right? Everybody can agree that no one is kinder. No one is more merciful. No one is more gentle. Right? No one loves more than our Father. But we also all know, despite all of that love, that if you get him angry, What do we all know? What will happen if you get his fury? So
That's
does
right.
he have that side? Yes. Why is it that we think that, Messiah doesn't have a whip of small cords? No, sometimes you need the whip of small cords to say,
That's
excuse
right.
me, but you've disrespected my father's house. And now I'm kicking you all out. Not some of you, all of you. Here's
True.
one for you.
That's true.
Lucifer's up there. He doesn't want to honor Yahuwah. He doesn't want to respect him. You think he's going to let him stay? No, he says, Michael, remove him.
That's right.
Yeah, that's your father. He says, Michael, remove him,
That's right. That's right.
and he will not enter here again. Whoa.
Ever
Okay.
again. That's right.
What does he say to the one who comes to the wedding supper without the right garments? How did he even get there? Hanging out with the saints, so he knew where to go, but not part. Okay, close enough to know this is chaff, by the way, folks. Okay, so there's wheat, there's tares, and there's chaff. And we all think about the wheat and the tares, but you forget the chaff. The chaff is close enough to the wheat that it looks like it's part of it until the wind
Yeah.
blows.
The loving side is, like you said, is what we want to do, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's our preference, right? But let me tell you about the loving side of Moshe Yosef Konachowski. So when I had my kihila in Miami, not the very best area. It was a commerce park. Not only did I have armed guards at the door, because part of my job as a pastor is to protect the people, not to make violence, but to prevent. In those days, there were church killings every third week. Okay. And then for a month or 5 weeks, I would say, listen, I want you guys on time. It's honor and respect to Yahweh. I don't need you on time. You're going to tithe in the middle of service. Doesn't put any money in my pocket, but you need to honor and respect Yahweh's house, right?
Right.
So it came to the point after about 4 weeks, I locked the doors. So if the service started at 11, the doors were locked at 11:20. So was I being mean? No, I was being a pastor. That's what a pastor's supposed to do. Because the opposite of order is confusion. And guess who the author of confusion is?
And disrespect. It's not respectful to it's things happen. We all can, have things that happen, but it's not respectful to to not know the start times and not try to make, I'm terrible and I have to work at it, but I know since a child,
You make an
give
effort.
yourself, you give 20 more minutes, you do what you got to do, but you run if you have to. You show up
Yeah,
sweating, but you show up on time.
you make an effort.
Okay. And my mother used to show up fashionably late for everything. That's how I was trained. 10 minutes. Everything was 10 minutes late. That was her. So for years, I've been fighting that because that was the way I grew up.
Yeah.
And she was always 10 minutes late. My mother always showed up, but always about 10 minutes late.
I bet your grandmother wasn't always 10 minutes late.
No. But everybody knew that they called it Rosie time. And so they just didn't, give her a hard time. They just made a joke out of it. But it was a very common thing. Well, that's not so funny. It's funny in New York. It's funny among Puerto Ricans. It's funny among people that love each other. It's not so funny when you go to the Midwest or, not so funny when somebody's waiting for you, right? So
Right. True.
People take it different ways. So you have to be respectful.
Let's bring it in a little bit here because we wanted to talk specifically. We have
About
Pesach.
Pesach.
Today's the 6th day of Aviv, and we have Pesach coming up in what is it? Roughly 8 days, right? Roughly.
We're close, folks. We are
Right.
close.
So let me tell you just briefly a story, and then we can take it into different areas. First, let me say I'm going to make a few statements here. The first thing is the defilement of Pesach among believers is so dense and varied. And you're not going to like this, Peter. The church keeps a better Passover than a lot of what I've seen. And I'll explain to you why I say that. Even, I know the altars, but hear me out on this one. So I'm just going to give you a look. Because at least the church does the little Polywana cracker, the wafer and the little grape juice, Polywana cracker. So they don't mess that up. It's not Pesach, right? It's not Pesach. But they don't. But Polywana cracker, Polly gets the cracker, everybody's happy. All right? They don't mess it up. We mess
Right.
up Pesach. Listen, the Nazarene Messianic movement comes out of the church, and now I got to deal with stuff that we'll discuss a little bit later. But I want to talk about an altar. So this is what some of the things I learned in Miami when we had a pretty decent sized group. I had a young kid at the altar. I believe his name was Daniel. Unfaithful, very spotty. He would come once a month, just very very unspotty. And not being trained the way I am now, I put him on the altar to roast the lamb. Make a long story short, it was 10, 11 o'clock at night, and the lamb was not ready. So I said, we said, where's the lamb? He says, the guy stopped cooking because he believes the rabbi, that was me, was on the wrong day. So this guy was so out of order because he said the Jewish calendar or whatever is correct. He stopped cooking. Unbeknownst to me, I got 80 to 100 people in there, right? For Pesach waiting. They paid $20 for the lamb, for the
So,
potatoes.
so he decided that was
He's
where
out,
he would make
no,
his
but he's
protest.
out in the parking lot.
Wow.
That's where we were cooking. Remember we talked about parking lot ministry? He was out in the parking lot cooking, and then he put the utensils down. He took out a Jewish calendar or whatever and said, I disagree. And nobody told me that the lamb had ceased to be prepared until like 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock at night. I got so angry. I threw him out of the parking lot, which was a commerce park. We didn't own the parking lot. Okay. And I had somebody else at the altar. What's the point? The altar. Even at Pesach, Satan wants to put a chef or a cook in the parking lot at the altar so that the whole assembly, listen, cannot eat the Pesach. That happened. That actually happened. And you'll always see it's a battle of the altars. And I made a bad decision because I shouldn't have put a guy. I should have put an elder, a pastor, an assistant pastor.
That's why I bristle.
That would
You're
come to me.
watching me bristle, and I'm like, I'm sitting in this chair going, oh
Someone
man.
that would come to me privately and say, hey, privately after Pesach and say, hey, we may have the wrong day. We may have to consider for next year, But a kid just stopped cooking. The kid was like 21, 22 years old. I was just glad to get any help. Oh, you're a chef? Oh, you work at a diner? Oh, perfect. You don't do
Good
that.
enough. Yeah,
Right.
You got to stop doing that.
Right. So
I think that we learned a lot of lessons that way. There's things that I've said recently. I said I'd rather hire the world for some of these jobs. Like right now, there's certain things that we were hoping, believers would step up. No, we're done. We're done with the fantasy. Okay, we're done with it. We're completely done with the fantasy. Now we just hire what so I got to go out, got to create the revenue because it's not being given. Just so we're clear. So if people think they pay for everything here, I got news for you. All right.
But look at the altar. Look at the battle on the altar. That was an altar. That was a kadosh altar.
But you got to be willing to say, look, this is what you're exactly correct. And unfortunately, people pick these moments, these silent argument moments, to then blow up on you, right? And you didn't even know you had an issue, which is very immature. So somebody accepting the position, which is the same as making a vow and then not following through. All right. You got a problem with Yahuwah now. You don't got a problem with Moshe. You got a problem with Yahuwah. Because, for example, people, let's say they say, oh, I'm going to be a member of Yati. I'm coming in. You can count on me, brother. And so what do? You go out and you start making plans. You've got these people. They've made commitments. And then when it comes time, they don't fulfill. You get egg on your face. The devil does that too. Sends people to say they're going to do something, then don't do it, and then leave you hanging. Okay. And then you're standing there, and now you have to answer to this other person that you told something based on this, and it rippled, and they got you. So all of this is part of why we need the Pesach. We need the gatherings to test and to see who is real, who is fake. Why? Because many false prophets have gone out into the world.
But that was my fault. That was my fault. I put an inexperienced man on the altar.
Yeah.
Okay, but let me, if I could, just follow through on the church thing. So why would I make a statement like that? Why would I make a statement that the church is sometimes in better shape than we are as Nazarene?
Today, we just got to it.
Today, I am getting questions and inquiries that I never got before. Let me give you a couple of examples,
Oh,
and
this
we
is
can discuss this. Should we keep the Pesach only in Jerusalem and not where we live, or should we keep it wherever we live? Number one. Number two,
dwellings. He was very clear about dwellings. You were in
right.
Goshen when you
But let me
started.
throw that out, and then and a couple more things. Number two, then there's another doctrine that's making the rounds.
Hmm.
And we don't care what the error is. We want to speak truth. That's why I bring it up.
Right.
Another doctrine is that you have to be a man over 20. That ladies and children get to stay home. Okay, that's doctrine
Who
number two.
said that? Who
Well,
said that?
a lot of people. Doctrine number three. Doctrine number three is that they're all types and shadows, and that Yahuwah is a a Jewish God who is finished with the Jewish people, and he divorced Israel, and the new Israel is to run far away from anything that Yahuwah wanted practiced. So we've got all this stuff. Now here's the deal. Now we have a remnant who is willing to keep the Pesach in spirit and in truth. This is a major problem. This is why I made that statement earlier. I've seen this because I am very up close to this. Okay, the problem is getting worse. So they're coming to the love feasts with
Which is what Corinthians 11 says.
leaven,
It's getting worse.
with leaven that's worse than the leaven. It's worse
Yeah.
than the leaven that they're getting rid of. Okay, if they're getting rid of it. So we have when I started in the ministry, everybody was happy to keep Pesach because we were all waking up and coming out of the church, right? But guess what?
Hmm.
We've been out. Some of us have been out now for 20, 30 years. And all is there there was a bunch of spiritual bird flu stuff. And I would say 80% of the body is either not keeping Pesach correctly or has been
Mm.
deceived to a point where they do it either incorrectly or they don't do it at all. So these are things we can discuss because we want to help people. We don't want to just waste, time exposing the darkness. We want to help people. So what's the proper way to keep Pesach? Let's discuss that.
Well, first of all, I want to address the third one that you said, because we're
Mhm.
going to get that room off the plate before we go any further.
Mhm.
So the third thing that you said was that we should disconnect ourselves from all things Hebrew. That is the Nicene Creed that
Yep.
comes from the Council of Nicaea, and it comes from an anti or against Mashiach Ruach
Yep.
that condemned all things that Yahuwah commands us. So this is part of the way of life. He commands us to keep it. They commands us not to keep it. So that number one. So the third one you said, that's not even optional because it's ridiculous and it goes against the Torah. But that being said, understanding that there are certain elements of what they're talking about that are valid. So for example, the element of the husband being critical to the celebration. Absolutely. It says, my sons, that he calls his sons. What is implied when he says, my sons? That your whole house will be there. Because when he says Abraham, he's not just talking about Abraham. He had 300 people in his house. Okay. So when he said Rahab, he wasn't just talking about Rahab, he's talking about her whole house, right? So the house is important, and that's a critical element. Now, secondly, this other issue of Jerusalem, okay, the city that is now, according to the scripture, like Sodom and Egypt. Is that about right? Okay. Now I do agree with the point, the sentiment that there should be that which is kadosh, that which we look to and we stand with. So either you're visiting or you're looking to it, right? Jerusalem, not it. Jerusalem is overrun. Jerusalem does not keep the feasts. I don't care what anybody says, and their gates are never closed. So what Nehemiah went to die for, practically gave his life to
Mm,
rebuild the walls and shut the gates. That's all been forgotten. All right. New Kingdom, the gates are closed. That's why he had us do this.
that's
Because
right.
when I lived in Israel, and I can tell you that if you go down to Jerusalem to celebrate a feast, you're not going to have any place to pitch a tent or do anything. You're going to get kicked out of wherever you stand. You can't even stand anywhere for 15 minutes, or somebody's going to move you along like you're at the airport. So this thought that you're going to go to Jerusalem to do anything is ridiculous, first of all. Second of all, Yahusha, our king, has declared, behold, I have declared your house desolate until you say.
Man.
So what? You want to go to a desolate place? That's desolate until you
Hallelujah.
say Baruch Haba B'Shem
And
Yahuwah.
Yahuwah. Mhm.
So when you join in with Sholiach Moshe, and you, whether you're there physically or your house is in Washington State, but you tuned in and connected with your whole family, and you came to the Pesach, and you together with your family are united, right? No different than Goshen, because trust me, not everybody was with Moshe on the day of Passover. There were millions of people, so he was in one house. But here you have this beautiful opportunity for people to join you at a kadosh place where you have the altar, right? So they can come and they can reconnect. Is this important? Oh, oy vey. Oy vey is important, right? And if you're doing it here, same thing. You're connecting to the altar on kadosh land. Now you are meeting the checkpoint, if nothing else, in spirit. Exactly how they did it in that day. Remember, people were coming to Israel for the Pesach. That's why in Shavuot, they were so many people from different lands, because they had returned to keep the feast, but then they return back to their countries or go all over the world, which is why the gospel went all over the world.
Right.
So is
So
it
you're
important that we return home? If they hadn't been obedient to return home, they wouldn't have been carriers of the gospel message back to their countries. So it was the faithful, the ones who did return for the feast, who were given the gospel and sent back with it. What a tremendous blessing.
so you're saying what
Go
I'm
ahead,
saying.
brother.
You're saying what I'm saying. That let's put this to bed because I'm telling you, Peter, you're not. People are so confused. Then they wind up eating at so many tables. Okay, we need to. If we're apostles, part of our job is to end the confusion about Pesach, because most people are going to be eating Pesach sometime within the next 2-3 weeks, regardless of what calendar they're on. Right.
Right.
So we're in agreement. I want you to. The apostles of the remnant of Yisrael are in agreement that this
Yes.
concept that you have to be in Jerusalem to celebrate the Pesach is not only absurd, it's anti-biblical, because as Apostle Peter just told you, it is a desolate house, meaning Yahuwah is not there. Hello? I don't care what you're reading online, okay? Yahuwah is not there. So if you want to celebrate Pesach with Buddha or Confucius, or you want with the Baha'is that are headquartered in Haifa, go ahead. That's ridiculous. You could have Pesach where you honor Yahuwah, where you raise your children, where you love one another, where you wash your wife with the washing
I
of
don't know
water.
how you read First Corinthians. He's talking to the
Get
Corinthians.
that nonsense that's been injected out of your mind. Okay,
Absolutely
that's
correct.
the last
Absolutely correct.
place. That's the until Jerusalem is renewed. Okay,
Yes.
Revelation
Yes.
21. Get that out of your. It's a trap of the enemy to make you more desolate than you were in the days of Polywana Cracker. Because when you were going to the Koich, the circus, all right,
I
on
think it's just
Sunday.
to excuse themselves so they don't
But
have to
guess
do
what, Peter?
anything.
Guess what? They never took away the crackers. All right. Every Sunday they get a cracker and a little thing of grape juice. Okay, but at least they're consistent. Okay,
Yeah.
they don't tell you have to go to Jerusalem and speak Latin to get the Polywana cracker. Okay, so
No, it
this
has
is
to be whole wheat unleavened. Come on, man. No
correct.
polyglot.
Correct. So it's insane. People, you are responsible, and when you don't know, you need to seek out a matter. I'm addressing this because this is growing, and the
Mhm.
other thing that's growing is that that the feasts were, of course, shadows and types, so you can do it to look for Christ in the Passover, not because it's an act of love and obedience and because it's a love feast. As long as you put on your glasses and the only thing you're there for is to look for Christ in the Passover. I'm looking for Christ. I'm looking for Moses. I'm looking for Nehemiah. I'm looking I'm looking for the ancient path,
Mhm.
right? Jeremiah 16, right?
Right. Right. That's good.
Come on,
That was
guys.
good.
If
That's
you
good.
don't know
I'm looking
what you're
for all
hearing
of it.
is true, call Peter Martinez, call Konachowski, call another apostle. Okay, we haven't seen it all, but we've seen too much for us to want to remember half the stuff that we've seen.
So he Sholiak, he says in Corinthians. So Paul's writing to the Corinthian
Yeah.
group. All right. So this is a synagogue of people that have come together, for lack of a better word, ecclesia, and they have gathered, and they're gathering annually. And he gives them instructions, and he tells them, wait for each other, tarry for one another. He also says something very specific.
Peter will be back. He always comes back. This is a probably technical issue, friends, so we'll just be a little patient and wait for him to come. See, the enemy doesn't want him. Doesn't. The enemy wants people confused. Okay, how do you do the Passover? Where do you do the Passover? So that's why we lost Peter. That the enemy wants people confused, but we want clarity. So we're gonna stay in the broadcast because we want clarity. But I believe what Peter is talking about is in 1 Corinthians 5, where Sholiach Shaul says, "So let us keep the feast, not with the malice of leavened bread and sin, but with sincerity and truth." So I believe that's what Peter is referring to in 1 Corinthians 5. But he'll elaborate. He's back. Okay, go ahead, Peter.
He says that we have to discern Yahusha's body. And this is part of why getting back together is important. Remember, we just mentioned the 5 love languages. Well, you also mentioned about learning to respect one another, the part of the process. So this is not just about Bible study. This is also living the word, okay? And so now you come into a gathering, you say shalom to the Sholiach, right? You come in properly. Now what have you just done? First of all, you just received the barakah that you wouldn't have received any other way, because the barakah comes because you spoke the word of shalom to the man of shalom. Now the word of shalom comes to you.
That's right.
So how do you get that some other way? All right, you can't. Why is some sick, weak, and some die? Because they don't discern his body and how important it is to be respectful.
That's
So
right.
he's literally addressing these issues in 1 Corinthians 11 to the Corinthians who are not in Jerusalem, who are in
And 5.
Corinth.
And 5, also chapter 5. The reason I mentioned that is when you were away, I just threw in 1 Corinthians 5. But yeah.
Right. And so he says, therefore, whosoever shall eat this whole wheat unleavened lechem and drink this cup of the master Yahusha unworthily shall be guilty of the guf and the dam of the master Yahusha. So you're going to be responsible for the death. You may as well. Do you realize that you've brought yourself condemnation because you didn't show respect? Respect is very important.
So we could.
And so how you come, listen, how did the first one get in trouble at an altar? First altar you ever see in the scripture, he comes incorrectly, comes to the right altar, okay, presumably on the right day because he's there with Abel and Abel was received. So whatever day they were there the right day, okay? And they're at the right place, but he brings the wrong thing with the wrong attitude.
So we could put to bed the Jerusalem thing.
Yes, the Jerusalem thing is done.
Everybody who wants to keep the Pesach, your place is ideal because it follows the pattern in the book of Acts. They broke bread. That includes Pesach bread, unleavened, from house to house. Be in shalom, be in peace. Don't let anybody trick you. Okay? So we can put that to bed. What I do want to point out is who the Corinthians were. In 1 Corinthians 10:4, Sholiach Shaul says, our fathers went through the cloud. Our fathers were mikved in the Red Sea. So he knew what most believers don't know, that the Corinthians were the 10 tribes returning. And remember a few weeks ago we spoke about Acts 15? Remember we were talking about the decision with James? Okay, check this out. The word there where it says, we agree that we trouble not the nations who are epiphistro. The Greek word there for returning is not Gentiles who are getting saved. No, the word epiphistro.
They were Gentiles.
No, the word epiphistro are the 10 tribes, right? Who are returning to the tabernacle of David. So the Corinthians were returning to the tabernacle of David. And that's why he says, the same guy who says, let's keep the Pesach, was saying, why? Here's why. I'll tell you why. Not just it's Yahuwah's commandments. It's because our fathers, the Judah fathers and the Joseph fathers, are the same fathers. Our
Mhm.
fathers were under the cloud. Our
Mhm.
fathers went through the Red Sea.
Mhm.
Is that physical or spiritual? That's physical.
Mhm.
So he was showing them one of the reasons you keep the Pesach is because we have the same ancestry.
That's part of it, but also it was a spiritual thing, because even back then there
Yeah,
was the grafting in of the mixed multitude. So, for example,
yeah,
the Israelitish woman, Comri or whatever, and then she has a son who curses Yahuwah, right?
yeah.
So he gets offended at something and he curses Yahuwah. What happens? He gets stoned. So, half in, half out children of the half in, half out. This is the picture I see. And what happens when they're half in and half out? They end up in trouble. There is no half, there's no stand in the doorway. There's either you're in or you're out. And we are going to have a webcam that we're putting on the altar, because we believe for the 24-hour prayer that's going to be powerful. But
Yeah, it's
now that
good.
I'm thinking about that for the feast as well, because you want to connect, you want to stand in the right kadosh place. And even though you're there at home, we know that. Um, Even if you were in Jerusalem with 15 million people, how close you think you're going to get to the grand ceremonies, if you will? You're going to be only so close. So be real about the reality here.
But Peter,
You had no choice but to have small groups. Even if you were all together in the same valley, you still would only be so close. There's millions of you.
but what you said is so true. You use the word ridiculous and absurd. Look, this is how ridiculous and absurd it is. If you want to keep the Pesach on Mount Moriah, you're going to get arrested. You have to convert to Islam
Yeah,
to go up on the Temple Mount. You want to keep
that's right.
Pesach in Jerusalem? Be ready to convert to Islam. Then you think Yahuwah is going to be pleased with your pay? Come on, man. You can't keep it in an apartment building. If you want to do this thing right and keep the Pesach only in Jerusalem, well, go to Jerusalem, try to climb the Temple Mount, and you won't get in unless you want to convert to Islam.
No, you go all the way to Jerusalem and do the same thing you would do in New York or Baltimore
In an
or
apartment.
Philadelphia in an
Exactly.
apartment.
That's
You're
what
doing the same thing you would do in New York. And so you're like, what did I do all this for? Exactly. And here, look, when are you putting your face in the dirt? Whether you go to Sholiach Moshe's and go to the altar there at Yati, or you come here, you're going to put face in the dirt.
the only altar you're going to have there is an elevator, right?
Now we are, and you guys are all figuring that part out. Like, we don't want to beat that up too much, but we do want to keep injecting it. And I'm waiting for you all. I'm looking forward to when you all start going,
Yeah.
wow, this is hard. And leaders, you guys are getting it. Thankfully, the pastors are getting it. They're like, I can't argue with that point. You're right. And that's beautiful that we are finally
So I
reaching
want to be.
certain things where we're like,
I
we're
want.
done arguing with
I
this.
want to be clear. The polywana cracker routine is not biblical. Okay, I'm just saying. At least they're consistent. Number two, you must be in Jerusalem. Not biblical at this point.
Mm-mm.
By the way, when for 40 years in the desert, okay, where do
Yeah.
they keep the
All
Passover?
those Passovers.
For
Yeah.
70 years in Babylon, were they in
How many
Jerusalem?
Passovers?
For the
Right.
last 2,000 years until Theodore Herzl and the Zionist movement, let's not even get into that. For 2,000 Passovers, nobody was in Jerusalem. So, what exactly are these people trying to do? Number one. Number two,
They're avoiding it.
you have to be a man to celebrate Passover. But it's exactly what you were saying before. The Shalosh Regalim, the three ascension feasts, okay? Matzot, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Those are the Shalosh Regalim, which means you took your feet. Regel is a foot. You literally took your foot and you ascended, right? It tells you the males led the families. They didn't leave the wives and children at home. And we have that in the New Testament, in the Brit Chadashah. When the family went for Pesach, was Yehusha and Miriam left home? Did Yosef, the stepfather, the Gaura, the guardian, did not the husband, the guardian at that point, did he leave his family home? No. When Yahuwah says men, he expects you to understand everything that is joined to that man. His
You just said a
loins,
mouthful.
his loins,
You just said a mouthful.
his loins. Everything joined to that man goes to the Shalosh Regalim.
That's right. That's right.
But it's a growing
So,
thing out there. Oh, women, you're going to have to stay in a separate house. You mean a septic tank house? What do you mean by a separate house? An odd house? You're going to put your wife in an odd house while you go and celebrate Pesach, you male chauvinist pig? What kind of Torah exactly are you reading?
Every
I
every
mean,
every enemy of every enemy of Israel would only attack when you unfeast because your wives and children would all be vulnerable. No, it's just a ridiculous notion. You say regalim, and I love that word because it always makes me think of royalty. Because regal, the word regal,
yeah.
and and it always reminds me of this. Only royalty obey. Remember, he said you are a chosen generation of royal priesthood. So is everybody royalty? No, no. How do I distinguish royalty from commoner? How do I distinguish that? How would you distinguish that? Do they have to be told? A commoner needs to be told how to behave royal, but royalty does not need to be told. Royalty instinctively knows where to go, how to behave,
Protocol.
what to do. It's part of it's part of who you are. And so if
Exactly.
you're part of the royal priesthood, regalim, you're going to move your feet. Okay? That's why there's only a few, because not everybody is royalty. They want to be, but they can't even bring the appropriate honor to Yahuwah. There is not a single thief, not one, not a single one that would be considered royalty. Okay? So he told me years ago, do not harbor a thief. So I could give no safe harbor to someone who refused to honor Yahuwah.
Bingo.
Plain and simple. I could give you
Bingo.
no safe harbor because I would then condemn my own house by trying to give you safe harbor.
Right now, but getting back to the feet, it's protocol, regalim. You go, and it all comes back to what Yaakov was saying. We were doers of the word, not hearers. So
Bam.
either Yahuwah no longer exists, and he morphed, like some people are teaching. He literally morphed. Okay, or now it's a butterfly, or he does exist, and the Moadim exist because it says Yahuwah was very specific. Bechol dorotechem, in all your generations, bechol mashoftechem, in all your moshavs, in all your settlements. So the idea that, oh, I'm in Puerto Rico, no excuse. Oh,
No excuse.
I don't have a lamb, no excuse. You do the best you can, where you can, and you move your feet and be a doer of the word.
Thank you,
People,
Sholiak, for saying that. Do the best you can.
and there are,
Thank
but
you.
like you say all the time, Yahweh has raised up a few places, not just you and me, a few places where his name is being proclaimed. It's not like the
That's right.
people have no place to go. Why aren't 10, 20 people calling you and saying, hey, can you screen us and consider us
Can
for
you
that?
authorize us? Yes. Thank you. Brilliantly stated. I think I'm so glad you said that. Why aren't people calling up and saying, "Hey, can we be considered one of the official places for gatherings? We have some. We have a place. We're committed to this. We do it every year. Let them know they can come here. That kind of thing. What do you think the alliance is for,
Amen.
people?
Amen.
This is what it's for, so that in Washington State or Washington, D.C., either side of the country or wherever in the world you are, you can come together. And even if you physically can't, so let's say you're like we keep saying to you, okay, but your heart is with us. You're connecting. And this now in this age, we get to use these, cameras and things so you can come all the way here. You can feel like you're there. By the time we're done in a year, I was talking to the guys yesterday. If you're putting a camera, like you have a cam on your altar, the more you see it, the more comfortable you are with that. The more you start to recognize, oh wow, this is, and then you see the fake, and you know it as soon as you see it. When you see these chiseled and marble altars, okay, you know instantly what you're looking at is fake. But until you have the real, you don't know that. That's how we ended up with 45,000 denominations and all this,
But
because we stopped doing it. So you're right, Moshe. You're
but my
right. And do the best you can.
my point is, why aren't people calling you and saying, would you please screen us? You don't know
Right.
us. We don't, we understand there's a trust thing here. Would you screen us? We'd like to come from, if not this year, next year. I'll give an example. I had a family last year. They had only been with me for 3 weeks. They had just begun their journey in their awaking, into the true faith. And they said, we're only a few miles, few hours. Can we come from? I said, no, you can't come. Now this year, I invited them. because we
They
have
didn't
that.
get offended and they
We didn't
made
have,
it. That's
we didn't
good.
have that soft covenant. We have that soft covenant now.
Right.
I know these are reliable people. They bring their honor, like you say.
Right.
They're faithful. So people that know you as a faithful man who's expanding his ministry should be calling you and say, "Listen, we're a neighboring state. Please screen us." Not, "Can we come? Can I bring my grandmother? She's a good Catholic." No. Can you please screen us and let us know when you feel we can, a little honor, a little respect.
And that's why I think we have to continue to encourage more fellowship, more houses. I think that, in my opinion, and this is the impression I keep getting, is that we are here as 1 Peter 5 examples to the flock.
Yeah.
You should be able to see the things that we do and watch and say, they guard, they don't let just anybody in. That's right. Why? Because in the New Testament, not the Old Testament, in the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, you will have instructions about who you eat with.
Yes,
And
sir.
if you take that lightly, I have violated this.
Yes, sir.
And I've paid for it. My brother is telling you he violated these things and paid for it.
I sure did.
So we learned through pain and through beating ourselves in the head, going, "You idiot! Why did you do that?"
In Revelation 19, Las Bodas del Cordero, the marriage suppers for all his wives, not just one. All his wives have Passover. Then you go 2 chapters later, 21, and it says outside what? Outside the marriage suppers, the Pesach. Dogs, liars, backbiters, crafty. Yahweh doesn't let everybody into Pesach, the ultimate Pesach.
And then you say, and they're angry, are they not? That they're not allowed in. They're rageful.
Woof, woof.
All the time displaying some other ruach, by the way.
The
So
only
they're
dogs that get into
displaying
Pesach
another
are
ruach.
your dogs. Those are the only dogs that get into Pesach. They're your dogs. All the other dogs in the New Jerusalem, out the door. Can't get in.
That's right. And it's important that you keep a family atmosphere, folks. Remember that this is family. This is not some religious activity. You got to get rid of this service. I'm doing a Pesach service. No, it's a gathering of your family. He didn't say to all of those in Goshen, "We're going to have a service." No. He said, "Everybody get in your house, because if you don't, you're going to die, okay? And this is what you got to do." And we turn these things into religious ritual and lose the family connection. I'll tell you quickly, for those of you that are Hispanic, when every year we make pasteles when I was a kid, every year. I don't know if they do that still down there. If they do, please send me some. But
I could tell you, I could answer your question if I knew what it means.
Pasteles was the pasteles. We all make Puerto Ricans make pasteles every year, right? And so pasteles is the you boil them and they're the Puerto Rican dish. You don't know what pastel is. I don't know how to describe them to you. So they wrapped in banana leaf, and it's yuca and potato and meat and other things, other vegetables. That is, I don't know if you've never had it. That's sad. You live in Florida. You should have had.
I've been
Somebody send this man
Mexicanized. I'm
pasteles.
beyond hope.
Somebody send this man pasteles. Okay.
I've been Mexicanized. I eat foreign objects every night for dinner.
Okay, before I lose my point. All right, so here's my point. We all would get together, and this was an annual thing. And my job, if my family is watching, and my cousin David is on here, so he'll laugh. But my job was the coconuts. Okay, so I was Captain Coconut Man. I broke the coconuts. So you have to have fresh coconuts, right? So Peter cracked the coconuts, and helped grind things up or whatever. There was no religion involved here. There was no. I don't look back and say pasteles making was this religious activity that we all did religiously, and very religiously made a religious pasteles, and religiously we put the coconuts in the water. No, we didn't do any. We were having a blast. Okay, we're having the time of our lives. We're loving it. We're family together, loving. These are the memories that we still to this day. Look, my cousin and I to this day still talk about.
Alegría de familia. Isn't that what Pesach is?
That's what he's doing.
Joy, unspeakable, full of glory,
Not
redemption,
this
new
religious
life,
nonsense.
victory. Yes.
Celebration of joy, happiness. You should be. That's why it has to be family, because when you see one another, like I have people coming that are family to us, like you said, they've been vetted for years. Okay, so now they're family. When they're coming, I can't wait to see them. And when hug, it's a deep hug. It's deep love we have built over years of time
Trust.
and trust. We're real family. We've
Yeah.
pushed away from relatives who were fake and have come together in Mashiach. How beautiful this is, that brethren dwell together in unity. Even
Before
if it's just a week. Go
before I
ahead, brother.
forget, what you're saying, okay, look.
And don't come visit me for an hour.
No. When Yahusha said, he looked around and he said, "Behold, my mishpacha, all who do, all who hear and perform the word of Yahuwah." While his
Oh,
biological family was there, he pointed to those who were his disciples. In my life, talking about Pesach, and try to keep it on Pesach. In my life, I have seen that profoundly. My wife
yes.
went yesterday to be with our family, grandchildren, and everything.
Mm.
You don't want to know the whole story. And not nobody asked how I'm doing. My daughter may have asked in passing. Now they know I've had, heart attacks and open heart surgery. No one asked. So in 43 years, it's actually not 43 years, I have seen my family the way Yahusha taught me. He wasn't playing. He wasn't playing. He wasn't bored and try to, get you thinking. No, to give a messianic riddle. When he told you would have a new family, he meant business. The real family are those who keep the word of Yahuwah and do it, not
That's
your
right.
bios. If your bios get woke, beautiful. That's
Beautiful.
gravy. That's gravy.
Right.
I've seen
And
that
we're
over
still nice to them. We love them. We're still kind to them. But
Apostle Peter, the people that visited me in the hospital, the people like you and Mindy that send me flowers, they weren't my grandchildren.
oh,
They weren't my grandchildren. They weren't my children. My biological family is worthless, except in the eyes of Yahuwah. They're worth something, and I hope he does something. But over the years, Yahusha has proven to me time that when if you're alone, if you're a widow or a widower, he's giving you a new family. It's just a matter
he's
of
giving you a
do you
family.
want to keep them at a distance? And when he told us that is your true family, he was not joking. He was as
That's right.
serious as a cardiac arrest. I've
That's right.
seen
And
that over the
family
years.
is
Every
forever.
every time I've needed something or some emotional support or whatever, the body was there. The bios weren't there. The bios were missing. The body was there. I
That's
need the body. I don't need the bios. Now that may sound cold to some people, but I need the body, not the
right. Yeah.
bios.
Physical touch is one of the 5 love languages. What if your brother here or me or somebody else that's the way they receive love and you never touch them, not once in your whole life?
Yeah.
Well, they don't know that you love them, right? But if you walk over that one hug, that one touch, they now know you meant it when you said I love you, because that's how they receive love. That's their love language. What if it's words of affirmation and you just say, which impact people, especially if they're not okay. There's not a lot of times that I'm not all right, but there's times when I'm not okay. And yesterday was one of them. I was not okay. I felt like I had given everything I had. I was poured out and I was empty. And along came my brother David.
He's a good man. If you like him,
Along comes my
I'll learn
brother
to like
David.
him. I'll make the effort.
David is
Anybody that's okay with you is okay with me.
Yahuwah says. Yahuwah says to him, "You're the combat medic. That's your job. You're a combat medic." And boy, oh boy, is he fitting for that, because he shows up and picks you back up off the ground and says, "Come on." But he knows my love language too, right? So he knows exactly what to do to
Spiritual
get me
nurse.
going.
Spiritual nurse.
Yeah. He knows which of the 5. Are you hearing me? He knows which one Peter responds to, because he's gotten to know Peter
And he knows
and he
where to
loves
touch.
me. And he says, I know right what to do for you to get you moving again. Okay. And I got to tell you, that broadcast last night doesn't happen. It doesn't happen, folks, if it wasn't for that. So you
Beautiful.
got to know the value of of
The
fellowship is
body.
so important.
But the reason he's
It's
special
so
is not
important.
just your cousin; it's the body.
Yes.
Everybody in the body should make an effort to be. I mean, we're not all going to be close, but
That's right.
the body. The body is designed to be the healing instrument, the extension. That's
Amen.
why the head is not here. The body is he flows through the body. When are we going to get that straight? That's why these people who are isolationists are self-destructed. They're
That's
destroying
right.
themselves,
That's right.
right?
That's right. That is correct. It's a frequency that you have to get to. Love is a frequency that heals. When you get into a love frequency, when around you is love, you will heal in that frequency. I'm telling you right now, your body, your physical cells, your organs, your bones, everything will improve the
Yeah.
longer you're in the atmosphere of love. Look at my brother. I keep pointing at this because it's such a wonderful example of Paul sitting by somebody's bedside,
Yeah.
and just his presence was enough that they said this guy's going to die. They called him because they wanted last rites. That's why he was there. He was there to pronounce him dead.
Wow.
Okay. And instead he said, no, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to pour oil on him. I'm going to sit here. He's going to live. He's not going to die. And 3 days later, this guy is talking to him.
Hallelujah.
All right. What brought him back? He didn't do any super special, super awesome prayer.
Proximity.
He sat there.
Yep. Yep. And that's where we began.
Yeah.
Proximity.
That's this. And everyone who has been rejected by your family, I think that's a part of the process because it opens a hole in your heart.
Yes.
And it forces the filling of that hole with the real family. So you
Yeah.
won't ever feel that hole filled until you get into fellowship. And fellowship is partnership. It is not just cake and ice cream or something, or dishes or pasteles. Okay. It is partnering together. And that means your battle is my battle.
And you're
That's
concerned
what
with mine.
alliance. That's what alliance is. Alliance is your fight is my fight.
So another thing we need to talk about, and
Mhm.
I'm sure you have ideas that or thoughts as well. But so we covered those things. Jerusalem, we covered
Yes.
the men and women. I'm sorry, the women and children stay home. Now I want to cover. This is tricky now. How to. So I'll let you go. Please, you go first. But the how to, because if people divide over the color of the carpet and the color, should women wear makeup in the ascent, they're going to divide, and they are dividing over this. So we come out of the church, we're awake, we're ready to obey Yahuwah, and this one says, no, 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 no Charles Manson family Passovers. That's what they call it. The blood, if you spill blood, it's a Manson family Passover. I've heard that. Then the animal rights activists say, well, Yahuwah, would never.
Oh,
So in other
okay.
words, there's all kind of stuff. Well, so
Right.
let me zero it in. So we want to
Mhm.
celebrate Pesach for the first time. Do
Mhm.
we kill an animal? Do we go shopping? Do we import meat from Tel
There's no
Aviv?
way to have meat
What
without an animal
exactly
being
do
killed.
we do? In other words, do we shop for that lamb? Do we kill the lamb? Do we pick up the lamb this Friday? I mean, what exactly do? And if we do go shopping, all the bones are burnt. And Exodus 12 says, "You shall not break any bone." And another thing I want to throw out there before you answer: circumcised. Now, what we used to do is no anybody who was not circumcised had to stand on the side. Then we said, nah, that's not loving. So anybody who's not circumcised, they can't eat the lamb. It doesn't say they can't be at the table. So we gave them chicken. Today, I'm like, listen, I can't figure this out. Okay, I've been doing this for 43 years because I try to be, like you said, loving, right? But think about it. I came up with this brilliant plan, or so I thought, right? Where Yahuwah said they cannot eat the lamb unless they're circumcised, right? So I said, perfect. I'll give them chicken. It didn't say they couldn't take the cup. It didn't say they couldn't read from the book. It didn't say they couldn't worship. It just said they couldn't eat the lamb. Okay, here's the chicken. So What do we do? Somebody who's new to this. Okay, what
Get circumcised. That's what James. That's what Timothy did.
no chicken? So we're not going to give him a
Go get
chicken.
circumcised. How about getting circumcised? What about
So
that?
in other words, you
Timothy
must
did.
be
Timothy,
circumcised.
Abraham. Take the word "must" out. Take that word out. Okay, take that word out because this word "must" implies a religious connotation. We're talking honor here.
Command.
So Abraham got circumcised as an old man. His whole house got circumcised. Right? It was radical. I agree. It was radical. Right?
But
If
you're
you're that
bothering me.
convicted,
You're bothering me. What do you mean take the
I'm
word?
just saying.
Yahuwah
I'm just
says
saying.
what,
He said you can't eat Passover unless you're circumcised.
but
That would be
Yahuwah
enough for
says
me. I wouldn't
must.
put
He
that
says
burden on you.
command. He says command. Would you prefer I use the word
No, but
must?
the point
I
I'm
know it.
making is here's
I'll
the
let
point I'm
you.
making.
I'll let you.
I love that you are saying this because this is very important. You know, we see things that are in the word, and yes, there's requirements, but the actual compliance with that is a choice. So, like for
Yeah.
example, we can say you must bring blood to the altar, Cain and Abel. All right, Cain and Abel, you got to bring blood to the altar, both of you, right? And Abel brought the right thing, and Cain brought something else. Okay,
Yeah.
so you even though you're saying it must be done this way, it's still a choice, and you will deal with consequences.
But command.
So it is a command. Now the
Command has
question is,
free
are you going
will.
to comply
Right.
voluntarily,
Right. But that's what I
or
meant.
are you going to
When I
condemn
said
yourself
must,
voluntarily?
okay, I understand. But when I said must, I said it in conjunction with Exodus 12. That
Right?
Yahuwah commanded it, and now it's your choice. Just
Yes.
just for clarification.
Yes.
It was not.
And that there's
It was not
procedure.
Moshe.
There's like,
Moshe said you must, therefore it's a religious. No, no. When I said must, it's because Yahuwah told me it's a command, and now
you
you
said
have
it
a choice.
appropriately.
And now you have a choice. So that's what
But
I
the
meant.
must is self-imposed. In other words, we have to say to ourselves, hey, if I have to, according to this, he's right. It says here they must. Well, I need the problem isn't call the pastor up and say, can you make an exception? The problem is call him up and say, do you know a moil that I can go get circumcised before
Yeah,
Passover?
yeah,
That's the question you should be asking,
yeah.
right? If that's of issue to you. And it is circumcision of heart, but circumcision of heart was never new. That was said back in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
He said circumcision of heart back there, even
Deuteronomy
while they
ten
were
sixteen.
physically being
Deuteronomy ten
physically,
sixteen.
yes.
Circumcise your heart.
And Timothy was circumcised, even though it was post crucifixion and post Shavuot, many decades later, and he goes to get circumcised. He had an obvious conviction of heart. He felt a certain way toward it, and he did it. Now, I believe that that's still appropriate.
Agreed.
But at the same time, I don't believe that we force issues. We let each man decide
How
what
can
he's
we
doing. So
how can
if
we force
somebody's,
it?
I'm not going to make everybody drop their drawer so I can check everybody. I'm not doing that. That's not happening.
Right.
And
That's
so
implied. That's implied because Yahuwah
if you're
doesn't
going to
force
eat unworthily, you're the one that's got to deal with
Yahuwah
that.
doesn't force us. How are we going to force somebody?
Right.
So that's
Exactly.
implied. But no, the
That's
point
right.
I was making was again. So you're saying what I'm saying basically. Chicken, you can't just because we used to do this. Okay, we used to have somebody eat chicken because the word says no uncircumcised male shall eat the lamb. Duala, pollo, arroz con pollo. All right, you know what I'm saying? We never made anybody do anything. Just the opposite. I said, do whatever you want. That's my
You're
style of
still here
leadership.
because you did it with the right heart. He would have removed you.
Okay, so you're saying to our people as an apostle at the gates that if you're a male, you must be circumcised before you eat the Pesach. Correct?
If the scripture says you need to be circumcised, so that is what it says. Now, I'm not commanding you. The word says what it says. My question to you is, it's the same question that the eunuch asks, what prevents me from getting in the water? Nothing. So what prevents you from going to get circumcised if this is an issue for you? If it wasn't done as a child at the 8th day like it was supposed to or whatever, right? So let's say it wasn't done. Well, then now you've come into the faith. That's an issue for you that I don't have to deal with, but you might. I don't have to deal with a tattoo decision either. But if I had one, hear me out. Are you listening, everybody? But if I had one, which I don't. Neither does Mindy, not on our bodies, no marks. But if I did, and I came into Yasharel, knowing the conviction of my heart and the integrity that he constantly forges, I don't think I could have lived with that. I think I'd be out getting a tattoo
Removal.
remover. Yeah, I think I'd be getting, I think I would be going through the physical pain of laser treatment. I think I would
Agreed.
be going through the physical pain of
Agreed.
removal. So if I would advise someone, hear me out, if I would advise someone to go do that, why wouldn't I also advise them, should you feel conviction, to go get circumcised if this is a conviction of your heart? Because it must come from you. It should never come from somebody else telling you to do it.
Should come from the Father.
You got to get it from the Ruach, and you see it, and you go do what you believe is the right thing to do.
From
So
the
by the
Father.
Ruach, Abraham got it, and he told
So
it to his family, and they had to get circumcised. The
So
end.
I'm going to give you, after 43 years, I'm going to give you the patent answer. The answer,
Yeah.
okay. Sholiach, I want to get circumcised. I want to, bris milah, I want to keep the Pesach, pero no tiene dinero. Because the doctor
Yo
told
te
me,
lo pago.
the
Yo
doctor
te lo
told,
pago.
the doctor told me it was $400. So my
Well, give him the
response,
$400.
my response to that is, I'm with you. But the response to me over the years, when I told them, you got to get circumcised to eat the Pesach, not to be saved, but to eat the Pesach, I don't have $400. So just so you know, there is an answer. There's an excuse. I mean, I understand. I got it. I got it. If you have money to pay the
I'm
lot,
pretty sure, though,
if
that if
you,
you said to everybody, listen, I need to go do this, and can anyone help me, you will get help
right,
immediately and to be end of it.
if you
So
have money
stop
to
using
buy,
excuses.
exactly. If you have money to buy Red Bull soda and buy lottery tickets,
I knew you were
okay,
going to say that. You're such
then
an old
then
guy.
you then you have then you have the money to get circumcised. The point is, when your God is your belly, you're gonna honor your God before you honor Yahuwah. So like you said, it's an excuse. But I'm just telling you that's the standard response. I would if I could, but I can't. Porque no tiene nada dinero en este momento. Or the word I hate. Listen, here's the word. My budget. Okay, a guy living under a bridge who's homeless. Okay, he doesn't have a pair of socks. He's got a budget too. I hate that word budget because I've heard people say, well, right now my budget, what do you mean? Pesach, Shabbat, the Kadosh things of it, budget? Where's the budget tied in to those Kadosh things? He just said,
Well, since we're
choose,
talking about
choose life,
commandments,
right? Didn't he say
since we're
choose
talking
life?
about commandments,
Choose
you are
life.
commanded to set aside money just for Pesach. It's aside from
Yes.
the Torah, the tithe that you give. Set aside money for it, and you also set aside money to give to the poor. So it's a nice article on Remnant House if you'd like to read it
Very good.
on this. And it's an important thing for us as the remnant to understand. Disrespect is not tolerated. Let's be very clear. Okay. And so disrespect is not something that we can tolerate, that Yahuwah tolerates.
Yeah.
And so when they come, they must come respectful. What you're essentially accommodating is disrespect. You're accommodating those that don't know how to come correctly. You're doing them no favors by letting them lax. Instead, you should show them how narrow the road is, how difficult it is to walk, and that's why few do. Because as soon as they see, oh wait, I have to go do something, yeah, you might have to take that nose ring out, right? He might tell you to take that piercing out. Well, but that's going to hurt. Yeah, it's going to hurt. How about that? So don't tell me, oh, but it's going to hurt or this or that. Look.
So we're in agreement.
If he's, it's a lot of things that hurt. Being in the middle of the desert hurts too. Okay.
We are in agreement about Brit Milah. That Brit Milah, for those who are just starting, they're starting out, right? So they should be circumcised. We're in agreement. But here's something I want to point out or question. I don't care how it comes across. So today we have today we what's that?
Royalty wouldn't hesitate.
That's right. Today we have YouTube, and today we have Rumble. Okay, so there have been people who said to me, "I don't have the money, or it's not in my budget." Yeah, but McDonald's is. That's about $200 a month right there. But anyway, all right. So the very spiritual, the carnal answer is I don't have money. The spiritual answer is I'm on a budget. Okay, whatever. I'm a New Yorker. Don't waste my time. All right. So here's the next thing. Talking about circumcision. So I've said to several people recently. I said, "Do you have YouTube? Does that come with your Verizon and your plan?" He says, "Yes." So go on YouTube. You ever hear of Abraham? Abraham breathed Milah his own house. Do you know there's a YouTube video for everything?
Sure.
I could build a car on with YouTube videos if I really was inclined. So why can't you
Really
cut?
good.
Why can't you cut a foreskin, which takes 3.4 seconds, but with a YouTube video? Oh, I would bleed. I could bleed to death. You could, but you could also have the bird crap flu come on your hair. When a bird craps, you got to run to Anthony Fauci for a flu shot. That could happen too. Now, go on YouTube, learn how to do. And guess what? Abraham didn't have YouTube, right?
That's true.
Abraham didn't have YouTube.
Now you went and made a great point there. Wow. That's a great point.
And how much does it cost to
Great point.
circumcise your son? Zero.
Yeah.
A little training will do you. A little dab will do you.
That's a good point. But there are, and I understand people are, they got their questions and their issues and so forth, and I get it, and I think it's a reasonable thing. I did actually have somebody that just recently had a son, and I asked him. I said, reach out to Moshe and see if you know someone that can. And if you can't, well, then, like you just suggested, maybe there's a different solution. But I do believe that you can't just make accommodation. So somebody says, this is my live-in boyfriend. Is it okay if he comes to Pesach? Right? And so you might think, yeah, great opportunity to get people saved.
Yeah.
Let's preach to them. No, not at Pesach. Not Pesach. That's not what Pesach is for. Pesach is for the people that already got saved. Pesach is for the people that have come into the covenant and are now celebrating it, right? This is not, can people get saved during Pesach? Sure. But understand that this is a family thing.
Yeah.
So the fact that you keep it family will be attractive. If you don't do that, you don't preserve that, well, then there's no boundaries to it. It is lawless.
Yeah.
And so
But
I believe that Yehovah wants it to be lawful. Go ahead,
in
brother.
Bereshit 17, am I correct? Abraham Brit Milad his entire house.
You are correct.
So it can't. It's not.
You probably got pretty good at it by the time you got done, too.
The devil said it's a very dangerous thing. Well, it's not. It's as dangerous as using a hacksaw or a lawnmower. You got to know a little bit of what you're doing. But
you got to know what you're doing. Yes.
Why would you?
But you're right. I think once you see a video, once you see it done once or twice, you'll be like, "Oh, I could do that."
Why would Yahuwah give us a commandment that was so burdensome that we'd hurt ourselves and bleed out in the process of serving Him?
You will not bleed out. No, and if you did it exactly on the 8th day, by the way, which he says, science has now proven that your platelet count is the highest for a newborn on the 8th day, and so their blood clotting would be at a premium if you did it on the day that he suggested. What a shock! He knew his creation.
Yeah.
And so.
Oh boy. Yep, Peter's right as usual. Smart guy. He's got to get his technology sorted out, though. But I think what he was about to say is everybody has an opportunity to obey or not to obey. That the commandment is certain and the commandment is cemented. But everybody has a chance to obey or not to obey, and that's what Peter was saying. The command is a standing commandment. It's cemented. Now it's up to the individual. I was just trying to complete your thought there.
That's a fine way to put it.
But the thing is with the I have a group, as you know, in Brazil, and I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to be honest. So they circumcised themselves, and I'm being honest, Apostle Peter, we did have different results. Some wanted to do it again. Like, oh, can I do this in the morning? Others went to the hospital because it was just too much pain. So it's like a skill of any other skill. You get out what you put in. But if, like you said, if it's important to you, you're going to do it, even if you don't have the money. and you do it a month or so before Pesach, because obviously you're now 38. You're not 8 years old anymore. So we both agree that no more chicken, no more arroz con pollo, no more making up your own
No
commandments, because we
patience.
wanted
No.
but look at our heart. We didn't want to push anybody away, right? So
Right.
that was our heart, but we were, let's say, misguided. So no more chicken.
No more pretending your heart is better than Yahuwah's.
Right. Right.
Changing his rules is essentially saying
Yeah.
he's too strict. He's asking too much. No, he's not.
No.
He's making sure that those who are in are all the way in. He knows exactly what he's doing.
And
there's a lot to the circumcision of heart, because people say, "Oh, circumcise the heart." You know how I know you're circumcised heart? You are faithful. I can count on you. When you give your word, you keep it. When you say, "I'm a part of this to the end you go." That's a circumcised heart. So so all these people talking about, well, a circumcised heart, what about a circumcised heart? Yeah, that you need too.
Both.
You need both. And a circumcised heart never fails. He walks in love for his family. When his family is counting on him, he would rather die than fail.
A circumcised heart will circumcise flesh. Love and marriage. You can't have one without the other. You think you can, but you can't. So it's love and marriage. A circumcised, okay. If your heart is circumcised, you're going to circumcise your flesh before Pesach, even if you have to do it watching a YouTube video, and you're going to remove the kaka from your arms, because the Hebrew word for tattoo is kaka. Yahuwah does have a sense of humor. Yeah, look it up.
Are you kidding?
No, look it up. Look it up in the Torah. The Hebrew word for
another thing that I'm going to tell you guys
tattoo is kaka. And he's not talking about coffee. He's not talking about coffee or cacao. All right?
Caca is poop in Spanish. So just so you guys know.
And in Latin, and in Portuguese, and in Chinese, and in Paleo Hebrew. Okay?
That's crazy.
You think Yahuwah has a sense? You think Yahuwah has a sense of humor?
Oh, yes, he does.
The marks
in heavens and laughs.
The marks of Dagon, and all these Valentinos and all these mermaids, caca. And like Peter Martinez,
be careful with these people that are rolling
up off your skin. Get it off your skin. Even if
they show you their full sleeve, like they're proud of it, as if this somehow says, "I'm more spiritual because I've been through more. Look at my sleeve. Look at all the tattoos. I'm a biker that got saved," or some nonsense that they think this is good.
The truth is, you're full of caca. Get it off.
Yeah, the truth is, you got a lot of pain yet in front of you. Go ahead, start. Better to cut off your arm. I said, better to cut off your arm. Isn't that what Mashiach said? Then if the arm offends you,
that's right. Then have Dagon
cut it off.
In there. So getting back to circumcision, I need to point this out. Being a nice Jewish boy, I mean,
at least you're not cutting off your arm.
I'm nice not because of the blood of Yahusha, not because
plucking out your eye,
not because I'm Jewish. All right, so listen with the circumcision shtick. So here's the response of some people. I want to keep Pesach. I want to get circumcised. Brit Milah. Okay, circumcised.
Yep.
So I'm going to call. I can't find the messianic moil, which is a cutter. Okay, let's keep it simple. Somebody who cuts the como se dice, the male organ. Yeah. All right. So
not the organ, just the foreskin.
The roof.
The roof. Be careful now. Okay. The roof. He needs that.
So Shaliach, is this Shaliach Moshe? Yep. Do you know somebody that like I'm thinking of going to the Orthodox synagogue, and because they have a moil, he'll come to the house for $2.99. They're running a special. Usually it's $3.99. Let me tell you when you hire a Jewish moil, because you can't find a Nazarene moil. Let me tell you what they do. When I first saw this with my grandson, I almost threw up. I think you know where I'm going with this. They circumcised a child. They put. Please forgive me. I need to make my point. They put the penis in the mouth. They suck the blood in the precipice, and they spit it to the ground. They go outside, they spit it to the ground, and they bury it. They literally put it in the blood, which is forbidden. We don't have to go into that, in their mouth. So you want to hire an Orthodox Jewish guy because you can't find a Messianic guy to do the circumcision. I would highly advise against it. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. They swallow it and then they spit the blood out. That's not their blood. It's the child's blood. Because my grandson was mikvah on the 8th day. I'll never do that again. I would rather watch a YouTube video and do it.
Hmm.
It's disgusting. So don't just think, oh, I can ask a Jewish guy to come in. No, it's better you learn yourself, educate yourself, and Yahuwah will honor your
Quite a
heart.
challenge. I didn't expect to have to talk about this today, but that's quite a
But that's
challenge. I
Pesach.
have to
That's
admit,
Pesach.
I,
It,
I, I feel for all of you who are dealing with that. I know that that's not an easy one. Abraham had to deal with it. So even if you're an adult, 90
but, but
years old,
but Peter, we're prepping for Pesach. When is a better time to
yep,
talk about it? What would be a better
that's right.
time? We're getting
There is
ready
no
for.
better time. I just I feel you all out there who are yet to go get that done, and you're probably like, oh, but this is also part of the consecration process, right? And um, honor is a gift that you are really giving yourself because you're walking in something that otherwise you just wouldn't. And so Yahuwah's got to put it in you to do these things like he did Abraham. He put it in him, and he's the father of our faith who staggered not at the promises of Elohim
Oh
and
man,
went looking for a city whose builder and maker. He
Yahuwah.
could not see with his eyes. He had to let Yahuwah build this city, and not a city of man, because all of those were vagabond cities of evil. And
Bingo.
everybody, by the way, brings your tithe. Everyone. The question is to which Alua Hayam. So either the Alua Hayam of this world, you cannot spend the other 90 until you get through the first 10. So everyone is doing this. The question is simply, who is your Alua Hayam? Who is your God? Is your God the God of this world? And how does he get his tithe from you? Taxes, mortgage, credit cards, car payments, all these things. If they come out before Yahuwah, he tricked you. The devil tricked you. The God of this
Encroachment.
world tricked you.
Encroachment.
Okay? And so he's
Jurisprudence.
constantly doing these things
Eminent domain. All kind of man-made
so
stuff.
that he can bring you into his jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And Yahuwah gives you the way of escape.
Yeah.
But it's difficult, isn't it? Yeah, it's hard on you, huh? Yes. Okay. It's not a budget thing because there's no budgeting the first. The first is the first. There's nothing to budget. You're spending. That's a thief thinks to spend someone else's money.
Apostle,
Only a thief thinks to spend that which doesn't belong to them. Go
Apostle
ahead, brother.
Peter, this world, like you were just saying, the ways of this world are so diametrically opposed to the Torah. And we're going to get back to Pesach in a second. I want to make another statement. Like, I'm famous for statements like Polywana Cracker. Here's another statement. Half the men in Scripture would be in jail today. Not for
Yeah.
preaching. No, not for preaching and not for obeying Yahuwah. You ready? They took brides when they were 15 and 16. They had been fruitful. They had blossomed, right? And they were doing brides. The parents got to get. Today, you marry a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old, statutory rape, you're gone. You're in the slammer for 30 years. Half our patriarchs would be in jail. Joseph would be in jail
That's a whole nother
because
kettle of
because
fish. But yeah, you're right.
there's marriage, and then there's statutory rape. And guess who's defining what statutory rape is and what sexual offenders are? Mama Beastie is doing the definitions, right? The same ones that are cheating on their wives and sleeping around. Our forefathers married 16 and 17-year-old girls, and Yahuwah honored them, right? As long as they had blossomed, right? Yes. Today you go to
That's
jail.
correct.
Today,
Well, in America, you would.
in
In
America,
America, you would.
you marry a 15-year-old with the father's blessing. Let's pretend you have the father's. Doesn't matter. You're doing jail time. So talk
The
about the
world
way.
has changed. The world has changed, and I think that there, whether it's 15 or 18 or 21, there's always going to be a boundary, and we always got to live within the boundary.
Yeah.
So where the line is, there's always going to be somebody that wants to push the line somewhere.
But the
So
fact is,
whether
in
the
our
line is,
forefathers' days, it was 14, 15. Flowering.
yeah,
The,
the
the,
line
the
moves.
Torah, the Torah principle. Well, here's a line: flowering. And parents.
That's a good line. I
Flowering.
won't argue with that. But the
All
point
right.
is that we have to adjust, right? And
Yeah.
we're adjusting with time as well. But here's the key. The
Yeah.
key is, as we're returning to Yahuwah's ways,
Yeah.
in Jubilees, he tells us that they will start to search out the ancient pathways.
Yep.
This is not to create new arguments and new debates, new Pharisaical
No.
conflicts.
No.
We're just like, if there's something that is going to inhibit your walk with him, get rid of it. even if it means you have to go get circumcised, even if it means you have to do some things that are uncomfortable for you. That's what we're saying. Is the pattern in the scripture is do that which is uncomfortable, honor Yahuwah, and watch him honor you, just as he did Abraham, our father.
I want to
And
share
so
something else with you.
that's the point, is take up your cross every day,
Before we get
whatever that may be.
before we get to
But
another how-to, you mentioning
yeah.
we're talking about Brit Milah. So just this has nothing to do with anything, but this is a talk, and a weekly talk. So there's a group in Africa who claims to be descended from Israel, but they basically don't keep any Torah, and they're obviously a black group in not India, in Africa,
Mhm.
and none of their males are circumcised, but every woman, this is crazy, man. Every woman, in order to get married, has to be what they call milah. So the actual Hebrew word for this tribe in Africa is when they circumcise the ladies, not the men. Talk about perverted, right? But the
Mhm.
point is they preserve the word. They say milah. So the ceremony is milah, which shows you the heritage in Africa. How did that word, when they circumcised
Right.
their women, milah, how did that get in there? Right. Anyway, so now we're back at the Pesach table.
What a horrible practice too.
Oy,
Wow.
gewalt. So we're back at the Pesach table, right? And so this was my question to you in the chat. And I'm gonna like to hear what you say, and I'm still open to what the Ruach has to say. So over the years, we have killed the Pesach. We've
Mhm.
driven to Orlando and Ocala, and we got a lamb, and we kept the lamb for 4 days. Don't get me started. CharlieVanGoshen.com. Like, you can see the lamb that we killed. I have a whole website. It's crazy. I'll send it to you later. And other years were like,
Okay.
nah, let's go to Kroger's, and because we don't. Come on, man. We don't want to be sweaty and hot, and we don't have to kill the lamb. After all, it's a memorial. Do this in remembrance of me. He is the lamb. Why are we putting ourselves through this torture? Apostle Peter Martinez, a newbie, an oldie, or a midi? What should they do? Should they kill the lamb or eat the lamb from the grocery store? What should they do? Seriously, what should they do? I
You
still
should eat
haven't.
what's set before you. That's what you should do. You should eat what's set before you, and you shouldn't complain. And if you're going to someone else's house, you eat what's set before you. So first of all, let's stop there, right there. Okay. So we got very specific instructions that you eat what's set before you. And so you do not get into debates once you're there as a guest at somebody's place. This is not the place for debating or discussing this. So let me just give you a little protocol before I answer this question. The absolutely scriptural answer is eat what's set before you. Okay. Now, secondly, whether or not the lamb was killed in the backyard or at the butcher shop or at the or you know where it was killed, the lamb had to be killed in order for you to eat lamb that night. So there's a lamb being killed regardless of where you get it. So this notion that if you go to the grocery store, a lamb's not being killed is nonsense, right?
Yeah,
Right. But believe it or not, there are people that actually think, why kill a lamb? You can just go to the grocery store. It's like, oh, vey. Right. I mean, I've actually had people say, well,
man,
like, there's a killing happening either
you're
way.
bordering on genius right now. I mean,
Just, so if there's going to be a death of an animal anyway, all right. So there's a lot of argument to say you should do it. I think that's where we're headed. I think ultimately where we're going to be is all of our foods are our own harvesting, where we harvest our own foods. Remember that this is an agricultural society, so this is very common for them. It still is to this day. If you go to the Middle East and you want fresh lamb, they probably have lamb and goats tied out back,
it's true.
and that's how they deal with it. So it's not it was very common, is my point. So our society, we're detached from that a long way. We are the supermarket society, right? We go to the store to buy something. We don't go out and most of these people that we're talking to today are city dwellers who don't even know the first thing to do about killing a lamb. Okay.
True, true.
So so rather than burden you with that, because that doesn't, like you said, it's a memorial. Um, if you're hosting a gathering, you're going to have a little bit different. I'm going to talk differently to you than the guy who's just showing up at a gathering. There's two different things. So Paul makes a distinction as well. People coming to a gathering, how you behave when you come to a gathering. Okay. But if you're hosting one, now you are the one with the dilemma because you're hosting, and now you're deciding: do I make? Do I go get a full lamb? Do I get a partial lamb? What do I do? Here's what we have done, because usually it's a small group for us, and so the scripture says to combine households. So when you buy only the portion that you're eating, you're also sharing that lamb with other families. That's actually scriptural. So you can, if you go to, say, a kosher butcher shop, and buy lamb there, and other people are also buying lamb there, well, in a sense, you're fulfilling that requirement, because you don't have enough your family can't eat a whole lamb, so you're going to eat a portion for your family, and you're going to go home. Well, that wouldn't have been any different in Israel either, because you would only grab what you needed, right? It's just you and your wife and your son. You don't need a whole lamb, and so you would come together with others.
Right.
And so the point is that you could argue both. You could argue, oh, you should just go by, but it's really about the size of the group.
But we already
And
settled verse
but the key
44.
factor is here you're bringing out a very, very key fact. That's why it has to be a kosher butcher shop. It can't be just. I feel like going just to Kroger's. You might be going just a little too far there, a little too relaxed, in my opinion. But
Right.
um,
But
but I do think that you could go to, say, a kosher, because like in Israel, there's
agreed.
you can go buy before the feast. You could buy just your portion.
But let
Well,
me
you're part of the bigger family, so that's easy to do, because it's easy to. So they all say, "Oh, we're all Israel, so you're sharing in our Pesach. So here's your portion."
right, but we already solved 44. Okay. No,
Right.
no one without Brit Milah. I have it up on the screen from Shemot, Exodus 12. So I'm gonna throw another bone into the mix here, literally, metaphorically. I got you. I'm with you. Everything you said, I got you. We've done it both ways. We've killed the lamb. We purchased the lamb, making sure it was kosher, and we made sure the blood was double drained. But what do we do with verse 46 in terms of getting a kosher butcher? You shall not break a bone of it. Now you know and
Yeah.
I know that when we get meat from a kosher butcher, the bones are going to be broken in order for them to package it. So I want to throw that in too, because this comes up every year, Peter, and we're helping a lot of people. I'm telling you, if they listen to this broadcast several times, and we're going to replay it on Shema Radio, okay, this is going to help you. So what? I got the grocery part. I don't have a problem with that. Somebody had to kill the lamb, but what do we do with the fact that not a single bone shall be broken?
Well, again, if you buy a leg of lamb, okay, um, is any bone in that leg of lamb broken? The answer, if the answer is no, then in the portion that you have, you are compliant. Again, you have two factors here. You have the person who's the recipient, who's the showing up at the feast, and then the host. The host has different obligations. So I feel like this is a real challenge for hosts to decide, what are you doing? Are you roasting a lamb? Now, I did go to one celebration here in Arizona when I first got down here in 2019. And the man that was hosting the Passover actually had a lamb that he had walking around his house from the 10th to the 14th. Okay. Everybody played with it, touched it, the whole thing. So he literally walked through the whole process. And then and then he did do the slaughter. And then we had Passover. So I have seen it both ways. But here's the thing that I felt when I went through that experience, and I can only speak for myself. Once the Lamb has done what he has done, in other words, when we were looking forward to his coming, these prophecies were telling us what to look for. to look for him who not a bone of his would be broken, that he would be the Lamb of Alua Hayam who takes away the sin of the world, as John said. Now, so let him be the focal point, right? He's the focal point. If you are behind, in other words, you were before he came, you were looking forward to this point, right? All right.
Right.
So he had not come yet. So you were keeping the Pesach in the pre-coming stage of that because you were looking forward to his coming. But once he's come and done it and it is finished, so he said, it is finished. He made a completion. He brought in the most holy, finished the consummation. Everything is done. Sin has been dealt with. Okay. Now you are post. So he's the focal point. If you behind him, you were looking forward. If you're now after, you're looking backward at that event. He is at the center. So regardless of where you are, it was always a memorial. The memorial changed, however, once he fulfilled it. So that's why we can go to Corinth and we can have, like you said, the wafer and the juice, because you're only memorializing what has already been fulfilled. You're not fulfilling it. You're a memorial to what
And
was.
they can make the same argument about circumcision. Well, you don't have
So
to.
in other words, you're already in compliance with the Pesach because
You know that, and I know that, but I'm just saying they can
Right.
use the same argument to say, okay, fine, the circumcision is not because he's come, he's circumcised us. Shabbat, we were looking forward. He is our Shabbat, he is our peace, he is our rest. We don't have to do that. So I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just saying these are the.
You could do all of them as memorials. Every one of them, you could say, I only keep Shabbat
Right.
as a memorial.
Which is why which by the way, which is why I teach, and I think this is profound, if I may say so myself. I've taught for years. Let's stop this nonsense that we guard the feast. We celebrate the feast. Mashiach guarded the feast perfectly.
boy.
We celebrate. We celebrate.
We
To
celebrate.
say that you guard the feast
Yeah.
meticulously means you're the Mashiach, or I'm the Mashiach.
That's a great point. It's a great point.
But so you believe, just to summarize, so I understand, and I'm still forming my view, to be honest with you. So you're saying you're heading there to the point where you're going to you're going to kill it, roast it, and not break a bone, or it's pointing.
What I'm saying is that I think it's pointing. I think if ultimately a community, speaking into the future. So let's say we had 100 people here, and we don't, but let's say we did, and we had enough people to where it would justify that. And we could do our own butchering and what have you. Well, of course, at that point, now that we're butchering our own meat, we butcher our beef, we butcher our chickens. Right now we do butcher chickens. We don't butcher lambs, but we do butcher chickens. Okay. So we do have procedures for certain things. We're not quite there yet, is my point. Ourselves as a host, I'm not there. But I definitely see us going in that direction because I think we're all going back to the land. We're all going back to an agricultural, how did Jefferson call it? Agrarian society, right? We're going back to back to the earth. So yeah, there's going to be a future where if you are a meat eater, and not everybody is, so please let's not start that debate, because I get that too. But if you are, then there's a kosher way to do that. Okay. And that is important. That is not something that you can just throw off. So when you mention running down to the Kroger or what have you, these are accommodations or graces, if you will, that are taking you in a direction. But I don't think that we want to say, oh yeah, that's you're all done here. So like you said, I keep learning. Here 40 years later, you're still learning.
I think here's one of the answers, not the answer, but here's one of the answers. Should I eat a lamb with a broken bone, or do all the bones have to be unbroken? So Yahuwah says, celebrate Shabbat. Yahuwah says, keep Shabbat. So within the Shabbat,
my lamb had no broken bones. The lamb I'm eating is not the lamb fulfilling that scripture.
Right.
So the lamb I'm eating is substitutionary for the lamb that fulfilled the scripture.
Within Shabbat, he gives us a lot of freedom. In other words, you may keep your feet up after you teach.
Right.
Someone else may go in the pool to de-stress after they teach or after they. You understand what I'm saying? So my answer to this would be, in a sense, from a 30,000 foot view, would be you're correct, and one of the reasons I believe you're correct is because Yehud, he just tells us to enjoy the Shabbat because it was made for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of freedom within that command, right? The same would be with Pesach. Now that Yahusha has come, he's given us the freedom to focus on the lamb, and whatever helps us, whether it's killing it ourselves or buying it at a kosher butcher, whatever helps us to relax and focus on the lamb and not on the
And
cooked.
tell people that. Tell them that if you're hosting, say,
Would you agree with that? That's that what you're saying?
Absolutely agree with it, because you're telling them, like, for example, with the bread.
Yeah.
Is the bread the same as that they had in the Middle East? No. You're using a different wafer, but it's symbolic. And that symbolism and memorial is what you're doing. So you're touching something that happened thousands of years ago. You're retouching it again. In a memorial. This is not the same. When we talk about the scripture, when we say, look at the scripture, it says not a bone would to be broken. Why do we see this? Because that was pointing to Yahusha. So that when we say, see, he fulfilled this and not a bone of his had to be broken. You see how he did this? That is a very critical point. Now, going forward from there, it's fulfilled. It's done. So it doesn't have to keep being done.
In other words, we are celebrating
It's done.
We're celebrating the one whose bones
was not broken. That's right.
But we got to end. But because we're out of time, I believe. But playing, and the devil doesn't need any more advocates. That's for sure.
Should you be moving toward that? I would think so.
Could say no, but
eventually you're going to end up there.
One of our skeptics from the Christian church can say, like you're going to say, who cares? But still, they're going to say, okay, isn't that what I've been telling you about the whole Torah? What you're applying to Passover, isn't that what I've been telling you, Peter Martinez? And you refuse to listen. I'm just saying, the devil doesn't need any more advocates. All right, but that's the counter, because
I see your logic. I see your logic on that.
Listen, I may not have been in the Oxford Debating Society, but I've debated rabbis on public television. I can send you the tape if you're not interested. Okay. And so I know the arguments. Okay.
Right.
And they're going to say, okay, Peter, be consistent. If Pesach points back, so does Shabbat point back, so therefore you can go to work on Shabbat. I'm just letting you know. They can twist that into a pretzel, but I agree with what you're saying.
You're not
I'm not disagreeing in one iota in what you're saying. I'm just saying, not one iota.
It's a good point. It's one that I actually honestly have not really given a lot of thought about the bone issue, and you've raised that a couple conversations with me. And it's put me in a situation where I'm like, how do we do this? Do we give instructions to our butcher? Do we kill a whole lamb just to eat the one portion and then discard the rest? What way? And so you raise a really good point. It's not a light matter.
But you raise a better point, because you say it's memorializing, which means it's memorializing. It's not.
Yes. That's right. I am not going to put a bullock. I'm not cutting up a bullock and putting it on the altar. Okay, that isn't happening. Even though we eat beef, and even though that isn't something that we're doing right now. Will it be maybe something we do in the future? I don't know, but I don't see it. I see it memorial. I see it as symbolic. I see it as touching, because in heaven it's already perfect.
But if you ever decide to implement that, don't worry, my brother. There's when you finish watching the circumcision YouTube video, there's a video on how to not break the bones and slaughter. I got a couple of videos waiting.
I actually need to go watch that. I gotta go watch that.
Waiting for Remnant House that you're gonna first.
I'm gonna love that.
Here's your homework.
Watch that.
Here's your homework. First, I want you to watch the how to circumcise yourself video. Then I want you to how to kill lamb and no break bone video. And then for dessert, I want you to watch the arroz con pollo video. He's not cracking up. Look, you're supposed to be laughing at
I'm
that.
I'm still stuck on the lamb, man. I'm stuck on this
lamb.
I'm like, I'm trying not to break bones. I'm like, how would you do that? How would you do it without breaking bones?
Write it down. 3 videos for your husband, all right? That's his homework. Anyway, we're out of time.
We are out of time.
So we love you, Peter Martinez. We'll talk next Monday.
We
We'll
love
do
you
it,
guys.
even though it's even though it's a day before.
Yes.
Pesach, we'll do it.
Yes, we will still meet next Monday, next Yom Shani. It is not it's not a Shabbat, so even if it was, but I mean it's not a Shabbat, so we're fine. And I look forward to continuing to discuss these things, folks. Please send up your questions too. We really
Yeah.
love it when you do that.
Wait,
Help
maybe we
us
should
out.
do that next Monday. Maybe if we get some
Q&A.
if we get some questions about Pesach sent in between now and next week, we can just do it because it's the day before Pesach. We can do a Q&A.
And I noticed somebody said, I'm all alone. Somebody, oh, Andrea, my heart goes out to you. It's like, oh, I'm alone, so I'm so lucky or whatever. And I'm like, oh, it saddens me when people tell me
She's
they're
not alone.
alone
She's
for
got two
Passover.
apostles that care
So
about her.
please tune in and please join us. And please, if
Yes.
nothing else, get us on the screen and let us know you're there. If you are by yourselves during Pesach, we definitely want you to connect in with us and let us know that you're by, so we can include you, so we can intentionally include you.
Absolutely.
Okay, because I don't like that thought. That's not what Pesach is all about, us being family. So
Amen.
And on that note, we'll let you go.
Shalom, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate